Today is February 4th, 2015, and I am Russell Black, the Arkansas ASHRAE chapter historian. Today we have two leadership recall interviews with two of our most esteemed members of our Arkansas ASHRAE chapter, Sam Cummings and Bill Harrison. And first up, I'd like to introduce Bill Harrison. Bill, great to see you. Happy to have you here.
Russell, glad to be here.
Bill was National ASHRAE 2008-2009 president. His presidential theme, Maintain to Sustain, delivering ASHRAE's sustainability promise, focused on operating buildings to deliver the energy efficiency inherent in their design, including effective commissioning, improved documentation, and programs to educate and certify building operators. Bill encouraged ASHRAE to fulfill its promise of sustainability with a pledge that we must maintain to sustain, we must train to sustain, and we must influence the operation of our buildings to conserve energy. Bill led by example through his role as chair of ASHRAE's Headquarters Renovation Committee, overseeing the $7.65 million renovation of ASHRAE's headquarters into a sustainability showcase. Bill is an ASHRAE Presidential Life member and a former Region 8 Director and Regional Chair. He has been a three-time delegate from the Arkansas chapter to Region 8 CRC and has been selected the Outstanding Member of the Shreveport chapter. He has been awarded the Regional Award of Merit, the Distinguished Service Award, and the Exceptional Service Award. He is currently the Grassroots Government Activities Chair for the Arkansas chapter and was recently inducted into the Arkansas ASHRAE Hall of Fame. And that does not do justice to the actual list of what Bill has done, but that's a select few of the things that Bill has done for us. Bill, if you've ever heard the Wordsworth quote, "The child is the father to the man," I'd like to start with finding out a little bit about your biographical sketch of your life, your place of birth, your higher education, your employment background. What got you started?
Well, I was a war baby. I was born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, when my father was stationed at Camp Gruber there. Shortly thereafter, he was dispatched to the European Theater of Operations, and my mother brought me back to Arkansas. I grew up in central Arkansas, out in North Pulaski County, went to school at Sylvan Hills Schools, graduated from Sylvan Hills High School, and then enrolled at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, where I completed a degree, was awarded a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering. While at Arkansas, of course, I was interviewing, looking for a job. I became interested in the field of sales engineering and accepted a position with a Trane air conditioning company and went through their graduate training program over a period of 6 months, and then was assigned to the field sales office in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was in Shreveport for about 17 years and then had an opportunity to move back home to Little Rock and open a company to represent the commercial side of Trane air conditioning in Arkansas. That was about 31 years ago, and since then our company fortunately has continued to grow and has given me the opportunity to be very successful, or be very active in ASHRAE, where I've always been very passionate about my service to ASHRAE.
Thank you. Please describe what attracted you to the engineering industry as well as your first job in it.
I was always something of a shade tree mechanic when I was a child growing up. I was always interested in why things worked and how things worked. Fortunately, math and science came easy to me, and so when it came time to choose a career, I thought that engineering was a marvelous place for me to do innovative things with physical things and to build understanding of why things work the way they do.
Excellent. How and when did you become involved in ASHRAE?
I moved to Shreveport in 1966 and immediately became a member of the ASHRAE chapter there. I credit ASHRAE for advancing my career in those early days because, fortunately for me, one of the chairs in the Shreveport chapter took a job in another city, and so there was a spot open on the ASHRAE board, and I quickly became active in the leadership of ASHRAE. ASHRAE did two things for me in Shreveport. First thing was that it gave me a great technical education. The Shreveport chapter was a very strong chapter when it came to programs, and so every month when I would go to a program, I would learn something about a different facet of our construction industry. The other thing it did, it allowed me to practice leadership skills. It allowed me to hone my skills as far as standing in front of a group and speaking. And for those of us that have had the opportunity to get before groups, we all recognize that when you don't use that skill, it disappears very quickly. So the leadership lab aspect of a local ASHRAE chapter was very important to my career development. And I truly do credit my activities in Shreveport ASHRAE as advancing my career in those early days.
Excellent. Please describe the chapter, regional, and society positions that you have held.
Well, I'm fortunate in that I've been active in all three levels. At the Shreveport chapter, I first served as a board member, then served as an officer, and in 1972-73 served as president of that chapter. On a regional level, I served as an alternate and a delegate to about 6 different chapters' regional conferences. I then served as regional vice chair for refrigeration. I had a chance to serve as the regional representative to the nominating committee. I then had a chance to serve as director and regional chair. I also have been fortunate to be allowed to participate in ASHRAE on a society level, first as a member of the board when I was director and regional chair for Region 8, then as a member of the executive committee. Some of the most enjoyable things that I did was chairing the working councils that make up ASHRAE governance. I was chair of Technology Council, which deals with all of the technical aspects of ASHRAE, and also chair of Members Council, which deals with all of the aspects of ASHRAE that affect our chapter members. Served as president in 2008 and 2009, which is an experience that's wonderful beyond words. I was able to travel to 25 states, 4 Canadian provinces, 16 foreign countries, where I was able to meet ASHRAE members from all over the world and share with them what the goals of our society are and how they can locally pursue those goals.
As a past ASHRAE officer, what were some of the major issues facing the HVAC industry at the time?
The major issues facing the HVAC industry is how to maintain comfortable, safe, productive indoor environments while using the absolute minimum amount of energy and having the absolute minimum effect on our world's ecology. So that was the big challenge, is how to protect the health of the people that work in buildings, which is paramount, at the same time that we're reducing the impact that our systems have on the world as a whole. Now, there was a side issue also. I said that I was president in 2008 and 2009. Do you remember what was going on in 2008 and 2009? The stock market had dropped by about 50%. Industries all over the world were scrambling around to try to reduce their scope to meet the reduced business levels that were available during that recession. And so one of the challenges that certainly the executive committee that I served on faced was how to manage the affairs of ASHRAE so that we could survive what turned out to be one of the worst recessions in a long time.
Bill, what was the single greatest challenge that you faced during your years as an officer with ASHRAE?
Oh, I would say because of the fact that ASHRAE as a society functions pretty much on autopilot, the greatest challenge that I think that I faced was helping steer the committee through those really tough times and making sure that they were prepared to prosper again when the economy picked back up and with that increase in business level, the society started to grow again.
Bill, what people stand out as influences on you?
Oh, you know, that's really hard to say. A very early personality that was very strong in my history was a fellow named Jack Thompson, who was the director and regional chair of Region 8 when I was on the executive committee many years ago. One of the people in Little Rock that always inspired me by his just completely selfless work that he did for ASHRAE was Kent Pettit. Kent, when I would see him leaving for an ASHRAE meeting, would be carrying 50 or 60 pounds of work papers that he would have to process while he was at the ASHRAE meeting. And of course, one of the fellows that inspired me was one of the presidents of ASHRAE from Houston, Texas, Damon Gowan, who served 90, I believe 91, 92. Damon was a real inspiration. And of course, Bill Goodman, who was president of ASHRAE from the Arkansas chapter. So I really have been inspired and led by some great ASHRAE individuals.
Excellent. Bill, what advice would you give a young individual starting out in the HVAC industry today?
Get involved in ASHRAE as quickly as possible and as deeply as possible. Learn from the people that you work with. The ASHRAE chapters are typically led by people who are leaders in our industry, and it really helps any young person to see how these people work, to see how they contribute back to society through ASHRAE and other volunteer activities. And it is inspiring for young people to see the dedication that these people have.
Excellent. What advice would you give an individual that is just starting out as an ASHRAE officer?
When you serve as an ASHRAE officer, you have a responsibility to the chapter members and to the members of society to treat the job very seriously and to work to do your part to deliver on the mission of ASHRAE. ASHRAE is a unique organization that instead of working for the benefit of our members, we work for the benefit of mankind. That's reflected in our mission statement. And it is a very serious responsibility to be a leader in our society. That responsibility has to be taken very seriously.
What are your future ASHRAE plans?
I'm really enjoying, well, as you can imagine, I've had a chance to travel all over the world with ASHRAE and meet with ASHRAE leaders from all over the world. That was a pretty intense 3-year period. Over a 3-year period, I was on the road about 640 days. I am really enjoying my work at the chapter level now, being a chapter chair, working with the leadership of the chapter, and I hope to be able to continue that.
Yes. And on a lighter note, please describe any humorous and/or significant historical events that you recall from your ASHRAE experiences.
Oh gosh, you know, I would hate to try to go back and really recount a lot of those. ASHRAE work is fun. So a lot of what I've talked about in this brief interview is talked about the serious nature and the responsibilities. But ASHRAE work really is a lot of fun. The people of ASHRAE are some of the finest people in the world, and anytime I'm around that group, I just wind up feeling better. I would hate to try to isolate a few incidents and say, oh, this is one of my best memories.
Right, just an overall great experience.
It's a fantastic experience because of the fantastic people that choose to work to better ASHRAE.
Well, Bill, I'll let you have the floor and let you expand on anything that you wish outside of my questions.
Well, I think that you've brought out a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about. ASHRAE has been very good for me. It was a way for me to accelerate my introduction into a business society back in Shreveport that was really pretty much a closed society. I was able to achieve some success for the chapter, and all of a sudden, instead of being a new kid in town, I was a peer with some of the leaders. My work on the regional basis meant that when I got to Little Rock instead of being a stranger, some of the most influential people in our business community already knew who I was because we had all worked together on the regional basis. We all take a lot out of this industry. I think that ASHRAE has been a way that I could give back something to the industry, and I don't know that I've given back nearly as much as I've taken out, but I do know that I've certainly enjoyed the time I've spent working for ASHRAE.
Thank you so much, Bill. I've enjoyed it.
I have too, Russell. Thank you.
In our second leadership recall interview, I am proud to introduce and welcome Sam Cummings. Thank you for coming, Sam. We appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
Sam has been a president of Arkansas ASHRAE, and he has been awarded the Chapter Service Award, the Regional Award of Merit, and the Distinguished Service Award. Sam is an ASHRAE Life member and is an ASHRAE Fellow. He has won the Ernest Pettit Memorial Award presented by the Arkansas Chapter Board of Directors for an outstanding contribution to the chapter. Sam has been selected to Who's Who in Engineering by the AAES. He has received the Distinguished Alumni Award from the University of Arkansas College of Engineering. He has won the Harlan T. Holmes Award from the Arkansas section of ASHRAE and has been named Family of the Year by the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. Sam has also won the ASHRAE Energy Award, first place at the society level, which is the top award, and has been named Arkansas Engineer of the Year by the Arkansas Society of Professional Engineers. Sam is currently serving on the board of directors for the Arkansas chapter and was recently elected to the Arkansas ASHRAE Hall of Fame. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
First question, we want to go back to a little bit about your background and foundation to your great success. Please provide a brief biographical sketch of your life, place of birth, higher education, employment background.
Okay. I guess I'm truly Arkansan through and through. I was born in North Arkansas, in Marshall, Arkansas. But when I was 4 months old, my parents moved to Sylvan Hills, just north of North Little Rock. And I grew up in the Sylvan Hills area, attending Sylvan Hills schools. Our house was directly across the street from Sylvan Hills First Baptist Church, where we attended. So I was able to go to elementary school just a block away, and then the junior high and senior high was about a mile away from my house. I went from there to the University of Arkansas. I knew that I wanted to be an engineer early on. I went to the University of Arkansas and decided that before I got there that I wanted to major in mechanical engineering. I was a big nut about cars, and I really thought I was going to go to work in Detroit designing cars. But I found something better to do, actually. Graduated, actually I'll tell you a little bit more about, I didn't graduate directly. I actually stayed out of school for a year and a half while I worked and made some money to go back to school. But and got in the National Guard at that time. Got out of school in 1971. Had already worked at an engineering firm in Little Rock for about a year and a half part-time, and decided that that's where I wanted to work. Went to work for Pettit & Pettit Engineers full-time in 1971, and I know it's unusual, but I stayed there my entire career.
Wow.
44 years.
44 years,
Yeah.
Excellent. How and when did you become involved in ASHRAE?
You know, I owe it to the guy that I went to work for, Kent Pettit. He was 100% ASHRAE. He almost insisted that people get involved. I wouldn't say that he made you get involved, but he expected you to get involved. And so he asked me to get involved in ASHRAE early on. I served on some committees, and then started through the chairs of ASHRAE when I was about 24, I think. And it was through his leadership that I became involved in ASHRAE, but I very quickly learned that ASHRAE has a lot to offer. If you just give a little bit of yourself, ASHRAE gives you a lot back. And through that involvement, I went on to other things in ASHRAE that I really enjoyed.
Excellent. Sam, please describe the chapter, regional, and society positions that you have held.
I went through the chairs of the Arkansas chapter and was president in 1975-76 year. too young, actually, I think, to be a ASHRAE president because I was 27 at the time. But I probably could have done a better job 2 or 3 years later, but I really enjoyed doing that. And then from that point, I got involved on the education side of ASHRAE. I always had a love for engineering education and stayed involved with the University of Arkansas, Arkansas Tech, UALR, and got involved in ASHRAE education and became the RVC for Region 8. That was probably in about 1980, and then went on to be the chair of the Society Education Committee in, I think, 85. And during that same time, I was allowed to get on some society standing committees, they're called. I got on the Government Affairs Committee in 1977 or 78. Hugh McMillan, a great guy from the Houston chapter who was president of ASHRAE at that time, appointed me to the Government Affairs Committee, and I stayed on it for several years. And from that, I went on to being involved in several ASHRAE committees. I was the CRC co-chairman for the Arkansas CRC that we put on in 1980 and 1991, and those were great experiences, being able to work with people to plan the CRC. Yeah. I then I was elected to the ASHRAE Board of Directors as a director at large in 1999 and served for 3 years. And between the times of starting on committees and being elected to the Board of Directors, I was able to serve on a lot of the councils and other committees of ASHRAE Society and really get a feel for what ASHRAE does for the technical side of engineering. And it was quite an experience. Since the time that I've been on the Board of Directors, I got on the ASHRAE Foundation, which collects monies for ASHRAE to be used for primarily education in ASHRAE, and I was the chairman of the foundation for a couple of years in about 2009 and 10, I think. So that's basically been my involvement. Now I'm on the Board of Directors of the Arkansas ASHRAE chapter.
And we appreciate all your great years of leadership. As a past ASHRAE officer, Arkansas level, what were some of the major issues facing the HVC industry at the time?
You know, I was president of the chapter and going through the chairs at a very interesting time. That was when energy first came to the forefront in the U.S. Up until that time, my firm, me, and most of the design engineers across the United States designed double duct systems all the time with no harness on the air delivery. Well, it became apparent in the mid-70s that wasn't going to work for very long, that we needed to do something different. So ASHRAE started developing a standard that was the first energy standard, ASHRAE 9075, and the 75 stands for 1975. So it was developed and adopted by the Board of Directors the summer that I became president of the Arkansas chapter. So one of our big pushes was to present that standard to building owners, design engineers, maintenance engineers, and so forth, so that they would understand how they could make their systems consume less energy. And that was kind of the crux of what was going on then. That later, ASHRAE became the presenter for something that was called EBTR, the Emergency Building Temperature Restrictions, that the Federal Energy Agency sponsored presentations again primarily to building owners and building managers about how to manage their buildings. And there were government restrictions put on what temperatures your thermostats could be set at. So it was very interesting, and we presented a number of those seminars to people around the state of Arkansas and even in Texas. And so that was the crux of what was going on when I was involved in the local ASHRAE chapter.
Sam, what was the single greatest challenge that you faced during the years that you served as an officer in the ASHRAE chapter and on the national level also?
You know, I would say that it's energy. Everything comes back to energy in the end. That's why you maintain systems. That's why you design them well. And so I got a great introduction to energy as I was involved as president of the chapter of being involved in ASHRAE 9075, and then the new standards that came along after that. And I would say that that was the biggest challenge. You know, one of the things, though, that we did here in Arkansas that I thought was a challenge that had a great reward is Arkansas sponsored something that was called the All Society Banquet in 1972. That was soon after I got out of college and started working as an engineer. We got 33 engineering societies that were either technical or professional societies involved together and put on what was called the All Society Banquet. We started out with an attendance of about 150 the first year, but by the time I was president of the Arkansas ASHRAE chapter, we had 700 attendees, including many of the prominent politicians in Arkansas, officials of agencies that dealt with engineering. We had Ronald Reagan to attend the All Society Banquet in either 76 or 77, but it became a really big deal, and it continued that way for several years after that, probably until the early 80s. But you know, that brought engineering societies together, which they hadn't really been doing. Especially, you know, civil engineers kind of rule the local engineering world in Arkansas, but civil engineers and the mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, all got together and put on this program that brought us all together, and we would have great speakers, great national speakers, and we got a lot of national attention for that effort.
Excellent, excellent. Sam, what people stand out as influences on you?
Okay, I have to say Kent Pettit first of all, because he is the guy that influenced me to get so involved in ASHRAE. Kent was a great ASHRAE member. He paid for everything that we did on a local level and paid for us to go to society meetings. But he was also the chairman of the Society Research Promotion Committee, actually the year that I was president of the Arkansas ASHRAE chapter. He had a great influence on me. Ed Riddick locally had a great influence on me because Ed was very active and he was very involved in the energy standard. Jim Wellens, locally, John Pate. And then when I think about society-wise, Damon Gowan, who is to this day a very good friend of mine, was a tremendous ASHRAE leader. I think he was society president in 1992, and he's had a great influence on me. I'll mention one other person, Bill Collins, who was a society president from Oklahoma City. He was actually society president the year that I was president of the Arkansas ASHRAE chapter, and he came to our All Society Banquet as well. Bill was a guy that you didn't say no to, or if you did, you had to have a really good reason to say no.
Thank you. What advice would you give a young individual starting out in the HVAC industry today?
You know, I would first of all tell them to get involved in ASHRAE because the rewards are much greater than the effort that you put into it. ASHRAE is the society that leads our industry, undoubtedly. They have the technical committees that make the decisions about everything that goes on in our industry from a technical standpoint. First of all, get involved in ASHRAE. Then if you're in the professional side like I was a consulting engineer. I got involved in professional societies as well. I was able to serve in ASPE. I was president of the Consulting Engineers Council of Arkansas, and that led me into being able to do other things. I was able to serve on the board of registration for engineers for 8 years, and I was president of that, and that was so rewarding because I got to know engineers from all over the state and in all areas. And so I would say those are the most important things, but also stay involved in engineering education. You know, it's great to help students who are interested in engineering, help them continue their education, help them understand the good decisions that they need to make in order to become a productive member of our society.
Yes. Sam, having been an officer, what advice would you give an individual that is just starting out as an ASHRAE officer?
Let me talk about locally. Locally, I would say that you need to make sure that you're able to commit the time to being a good ASHRAE officer. And it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it takes sacrifices. You know, I was fortunate that I was the president of the ASHRAE chapter before my first child was born that fall. So just before my first daughter was born, I was president of the chapter. But it takes a real commitment, and I admire the youngsters, I'll call y'all youngsters, the youngsters that make a commitment now, even though they have children that they have to take time away from. But you must, first of all, make sure you're willing to make that commitment, and then learn how to work with people. You know, nothing's accomplished by yourself. And no matter what you do, where you do it, it's not accomplished by you. It's accomplished by the people that are with you, and the people that compliment you, and the people that drag you along sometimes. Mm-hmm. But that would be my advice to you.
Thank you. What are your future ASHRAE plans?
I am still involved in the foundation to some extent, but I'm also, as an ASHRAE Fellow, I'm involved in the ASHRAE Fellows. I have just become a life member. See, I'm not old like some people are. I've just become a life member, and I'm starting to get involved in the life membership committee. And then I plan to stay involved on the local level too.
Excellent.
With the board of directors.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Last question, Sam. Please describe any humorous and/or significant historical events that you recall from your ASHRAE experiences.
Well, some of the humorous events I can't put on this recording. No, I'm joking. There were tons of things that were lots of fun. I would just say that energy from, and we I hate to say it, but we really thought very little about energy in the early 70s. We didn't. That was not a concern. It was mainly you wanted a system that would work. But from that point on, being involved in decisions about energy, and I was lucky to serve on a number of technical committees that were involved with energy decisions. I would say that was the big thing that I was involved in through the years of ASHRAE, that I got a great enjoyment from, because I knew that was something that would allow our country to become energy independent someday.
Yes.
I don't know when that's going to be, but there is going to be a day out there where we become energy independent, and that's the thing that I would say was the most important.
Excellent. Well, as a wrap-up, I'll let you have the floor, and you can say what you want.
A couple of things. One of the things that influenced me to be an engineer, when I was in about the 6th grade, my dad and his brother bought a hardware and sporting goods store in Sylvan Hills, about a mile from my house. And as all good dads do, my dad decided that I needed help in the hardware store, so I did. I learned so much about piping, about conduit, about electrical things, and we had automobile tires, guns, fishing equipment, and so forth. But I learned a lot about a lot of things, and by the time I was in the 7th or 8th grade, I knew that I wanted to be an engineer, because an engineer had to be able to work with all those things and figure out how to make them better. Yes. And so I decided that I wanted to be an engineer, and I decided mechanical was the way to go, even though I had a good friend by the name of Bill Driggers, who was a civil engineer and was president of Garver Engineers, who would come in the store about once a month and try to talk me into going into civil engineering instead of mechanical engineering. But I knew I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and it all came from my dad's hardware store. That's really the truth. And I never once thought about not continuing on. And I joined the Army National Guard in 1968, served 6 years in the Guard while I finished up my education at Fayetteville and in my early married years, and it just all worked out very well, and I never regret having decided that I wanted to be an engineer. And you know what? 2 of my 3 children got engineering degrees. Wow. Without me insisting. I just told them that it was a good way to get a good background, and then you can do anything you want to, and neither of them practice engineering now. They got engineering degrees, but they do something else. But engineering is a great background, and I'm so glad that I chose that.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Enjoyed it so much.
Thank you very much.